what I generally tell people from is that if you're failing and you're introspecting on your failures, right, instead of asking yourself what you did wrong, you got to ask yourself, what did I do right? My primary job in professional athletes is to take someone's confidence before competition to such a level that they're bordering on arrogance. You know, that they literally they're bordering on arrogance. Because in my world, there is zero room for self-doubt. Success is so difficult to define. And when you look at money and you look at medals, those are the external variables through which we define success. It's so important for you to understand what is your variable for success.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you guys are, and welcome to my new episode of Honest Conversations. Today I'm going to have a very interesting guest. I'm going to have an honest conversation today with a very interesting person I had met through friends, through work. Shayamal, I've already mentioned actually in my stories and in my invitation, so I'm just waiting for him to join us. I missed my conversations last week because we had a very tough week. It wasn't bad tough, it was a good tough. We had a huge event we did for our Russian-speaking community, so I had to take some time off my own Instagram work. So today I'm back, and I'm back with an amazing guest. Hey Shayamal, how are you?
Hi Kristina, how are you? How are you doing?
I am doing fine. You're in India, right?
I'm in Goa, yeah, at the moment.
Oh, I see.
And
Because
you're stuck in Malaysia?
Yes, I'm stuck. That's the proper word for that. I'm stuck in Malaysia, and internet is so tricky here, where you often get bad times when I do interviews. So I was just saying, it's so fun to see where the people are from. There are people from Australia, there are people from America, because normally I do all my interviews in Russian, so I normally get countries like, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Russia. So
okay.
that's fun.
All right. Interesting. So we've got visitors from all over the world. Welcome to everyone.
Yeah, that's how I've been picking a time. I've been doing those conversations for a few months now, and I could never hit the time to cover all the time zones, but this seems to be working.
This is a good time, yeah.
So,
it's definitely for us in India.
oh, okay, good. So yeah, I'm stuck in KL. You are in India. People are all over the world, and I was thinking that normally I go into those conversations without having a particular agenda, because I try to just do it, as it goes. But with you, I can't avoid the topic, which was super interesting to me. Because, oh yeah, actually, for those people who are joining through my account, Shayamal is a person, as I said, I know you through work, through friends, half work, half friends. And I'm going to try not to mess it up, but Shayamal is a sports scientist and a psychologist, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So because it's a casual format, I try not to ask for biography and all that stuff. But it just happened so that I was reading Shayamal's new book, which is being published now.
Yes, coming in 2 months, yeah.
And believe it or not, but since I read it, I've already quoted you a few times. So, and it wasn't like in 1 week.
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored.
So the book is on balance. I wanted to talk about that because balance, it's interesting. This whole lockdown, in a way, is about balance, I think, right?
Yeah.
Tell me your story, because I know a little bit, but tell me your story. How did you come to that?
How did I come to the topic of finding balance? Yeah, it's quite interesting. I grew up, Kristina, in South Africa, and I grew up wanting to play sport in sort of an apartheid South Africa, and opportunities were really difficult for people of color back then. And I was pretty good. I was always in the mix and in the setup, but yet opportunities kind of always eluded us. And we had what was called the quota system. So no matter how good you are, they really only selected one person of color. And that was taking a mental toll on me. And I knew that I needed to find a way to sort of really bring myself and understand my mind and basically create a little bit of an outlet for me. And, as a young boy growing up, I was fighting a lot with my parents to give me the opportunity to do what I wanted to. And they knew that opportunities were restricted, so they tried to veer me away from them. And when trouble really started bubbling, I couldn't really turn to them because I was fighting with them to create this opportunity. So I couldn't really go and say, you know what, it's not working out. What do I do? So I turned to spirituality. Okay. And spirituality was where I found the importance of really the middle path, which is what balance is. And then I've spent about 15 years trying to really understand the concept of balance and what does it mean. I mean, we use this word every single day in our life, work-life balance also, but what does balance really mean? And more importantly, why do we want balance in life? You know, what do we want from it? And that's been the journey that I've been on and searching on why do you want it and where do you go about finding it? And I've come up with some pretty interesting answers if you want to know.
Yeah, I want to know, but you know, as I was talking, as you were talking, I was thinking, you said when you were in a situation where, you know, you couldn't change things, you could become better, but that didn't change the situation for you. And you turned to spirituality. And I think this is a path of a lot of people to turn to spirituality. It's, is it really, and I'm going to be a little maybe controversial right now, but is it really a solution to the situation, or is it just a constellation, you know, like a little bit of a shift of an attention? Because I know from my personal experience, when things are really tough, being philosophical about things actually helps to, you know, to just deal with the things the way they are and not to fight them. So how do you have explanation? Why did you turn to spirituality? Because I mean, you were in sports. It's kind of a different field.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the reason why I turned to spirituality was because, you know, I came from a very spiritual background in any case, and, you know, my family and all are in it. And what I noticed is that, you know, when you walk and you're surrounded by people who are grounded in energy, okay, you feel calmer, you feel more grounded, and there's no need to really stand out. So, you know, if you look at a group of monks, everyone looks the same. You cannot tell who's more educated, who has more money, who's doing what. Everyone is really not being overcome by the egos of what they have. Okay, and in the world of sport, we're always pushing so hard to be the best, be the best. And I realized and I figured out that, you see, your ego is most vulnerable at the extremities, which means if you are the best in the world, or if you are really struggling to compete, and if you're lacking in some shape and form, one is you're feeling a sense of not belonging, the other is you're feeling an extreme sense of perhaps entitlement to some shape and form, and both of that is ego. But when you're sitting in the middle, Kristina, you know, no one proudly goes around and say, I'm in the middle of the class, I'm in the middle of the group, in the middle, you accept your position as being one of many. You know, so in the middle, the ego dies. And when the ego dies, you give yourself a chance to truly feel everything and experience everything. So when people turn to spirituality, what are they doing? They're trying to kill the ego so that they're getting an opportunity to truly feel what they're feeling at that time. You know, and what it also teaches you is a little bit of equanimity. Equanimity is where it teaches you to keep that emotion at distance in some shape and form. And I think this is what all spiritual practices teach you in some shape and form. And I think this is why people veer towards it when pain is there.
But you didn't stay in that. I mean, you didn't go deeper into spirituality, into egolessness. You did come back to the world of egos and, well, call it so. So why was that?
I came back because after spending about close to just under 4 years in there, I felt that, you know, I wanted to do a lot more. And you know, one thing that was really troubled me, there was one particular incident, and I remember I was walking into the temple with a few fellow monk friends, and there was a family that was sitting outside, you know, who were really destitute. And it was an old man and his wife, and they had 2 young kids, and they had nothing, you know. And everybody walked past them into the temple, and they went, and we sort of prostrated to the deities, and we went about our day. And that evening I asked everyone, I said, guys, how many people were sitting at the entrance of the temple when we walked past? And not a single one of them even noticed that family. And yet I thought to myself, you know, do I want to be in a place where I'm so engrossed in cultivating myself that I am ignorant of the sufferings of people around them? Why can't I take the learnings that I have here and dilute it and create it in some accessible form to everyone, so that I may not be able to get rid of the physical pain, but at least I can help them find some mental comfort at a time like that. So that was why I left.
So, you know, the thing which I liked about your explanation of balance was this mental model that you were suggesting that we do, and this point of I don't know the term of it, but this point that is in the middle, you know, that gives the balance.
The fulcrum, yeah,
the fulcrum. Thank you. Can you explain how did you it's so basically you say that balance has to be felt, not explained. Yet, can you explain balance? I know it's controversial, but it is.
So
it is
balance
what I'm asking you to do.
Balance is super controversial. And, you know, in studying everything, I realized, Kristina, that the most important aspect of anything in balance is actually the central point, what it balances on. The integrity of the central point helps you bring more in balance, which means that if something, and I use it in the book, I explain, if I give you a block of steel and ask you to balance something, it's perfectly easy. If I give you a nail, it's easy. If I give you a water balloon, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And the only thing that's changing is the integrity of the central point. And in your life, you are the central point. And that was the metaphor that I'm trying to draw to them. So I'm saying if we really spend enough time in understanding ourselves, you're able to understand which elements of your life to bring in balance. And I'm not asking people to stay in the middle with every aspect of your life. But my balance model is body, mind, relationships, and environment. Okay, so I'm saying, if you want to really reach out of your comfort zone in one component of your life, you need to be anchored in another. You need to be anchored in another component. You know, so I use a beautiful example. So I'm saying there's something just out of reach, and you want to get it. You know, there's two ways to get it. One is you can take a leap of faith and you hope that you grab it, or the second is that a friend can hold you on one hand whilst you reach out for something, and that friend is that anchoring spot, you know. So if you want to really push yourself in any aspect in life, ask yourself, what is going to anchor me, so that if that goes badly wrong, what brings me back to the middle, you know. For me, spirituality anchors me. Spirituality anchors me, and you know, a lot of practices like breath work, like chanting, like just being connected to my spiritual master. Whenever things go wrong, I go to him. And I can give you one beautiful example. When, you know, about 2-3 years ago, Kristina, I was really struggling with, do I tell people I'm a psychologist? Do I tell them I'm a sports scientist? Or do I talk about my spiritual aspect? Because there's really no title that brings these three elements together. And I was at a loss for identity. And this went on for a few months. And then I turned to him and he says, you know, the problem with identity is, you can spend all the time thinking about it, but your identity is given to you by the outside world. So the only thing you do is you stay true to your message. And when it resonates with someone else, they will give you your identity. You know, a teacher is called a teacher by the students. A doctor is called a doctor by the people who he treats. You know, so your identity is given by the external world. And he really helped me saying, just stay true to the messaging that you're going. Let your identity form in whatever shape and form people want to call you. And if they don't want to call you anything, even that's perfectly fine.
So what's your identity? Have you found it?
No, I don't have a title. I say what I'm qualified as, but I don't say that, you know, I'm a healer. I don't say I'm a coach. I don't say I'm a sports scientist. I don't say anything. Like whatever people want to use at that particular time, I allow them to use it. And because also, Kristina, I'm sure you also fall into this trapping. And probably one of the best ways of thinking about it is, you know, if someone calls you to deliver a keynote address and they give you a particular topic, right? You feel so confined to put all your information and knowledge within that one topic, you know? So exactly like how a title restricts us, even topics that people ask us to speak about really restrict your learnings in some. At least I find myself really constricted when someone tells me, okay, I need you to just talk about this one thing. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to really shift things and perhaps put a square peg in a round hole, you know, and things like that. Yeah.
But on one side, I see you're pretty much into the scientific side of the things, because
Yes.
obviously you've worked with sports, with athletes, with like world class athletes. But on the other side, you are a psychologist, right?
Yes.
Which is also science, but a different kind of science.
It's a different science. Yeah. Yeah.
They are related to some degree. So what is, and then you're talking about spirituality as being your anchor. So what you do, is it a combination of all three and what comes out of that? Or is one of these three components more you and dearer to you?
It's a great question. I think I try to really find that balance between evidence-based science. So I'm trying to bring that balance between science, which is evidence-based, because but when I'm also healing, the main intervention that I'm bringing in place is a spiritual intervention of mindfulness. So I'm taking emotions that psychology speaks about, and I'm using mindfulness techniques to teach people how to become aware of that, but the principles of healing, especially when it comes to the body, right, are very evidence-based. So I'm switching between the two. So if I'm talking predominantly about the human body, everything is evidence-based. When I'm talking about the mind and your intuition, I'm really allowing and trying to guide people to feel, because you really need to feel your way through. Realizations are really drawn from academic knowledge. They really come from within, and you've got to feel it. So I try to encourage people to feel more than anything else. But I think what is really important is science has given us a template to know that we're moving in the right direction. So that's so important. So it won't give you all the information. You need to feel and draw your own realizations and conclusions, but it's a beautiful template to let you know whether I'm moving in the right direction. And I think that's the subtlety between the two.
But coming from a scientific background, I understand you come from that background.
Yes.
Don't you have the desire to explain everything? Like I was born in Soviet Union, and my physics teacher was saying that everything that's not explained by science doesn't exist. But then I ended up doing and studying intuition, and it didn't make sense to me, except that I experienced things which I couldn't explain. But this cynical scientist in me, I do not know if all scientists are like that, wants to explain everything. Do you have this struggle? Like you're very into spirituality and talking about healing, and I understand that you're talking about healing not as a medical doctor, but more of an energy kind of
correct.
Practices.
That's a great. It's a great question.
Does your scientist in you ask you for explanations?
I struggle, and I think the reason why I'm a little better than I think anyone else, or the reason that I found that balance was because, Kristina, I work in the world of high performance sport, and in the world of high performance sport, we are surrounded by thousands of cameras. Sometimes for me to make one physiological intervention in my athlete, I need to study hundreds of variables. And when I try something, it's that gain is marginal. And once I've tried it once, it's done. My opposition are already practicing for a way to counter that. Okay, so what helps me is that even though I'm a scientist, my philosophy is that I will not get success by repeating what is proven. I will get success by disproving what is proven. Oh, wow. So so my job is to look at what is accepted as status quo and then find a way to disprove it. And that's where I think that spiritual lens of trusting yourself. So taking all the evidence and then looking at, okay, what are going to be those random knockings of information that is going to explode into something beautiful, and you trust yourself with that. So I think this is where that intuition really marries science, because I come from that world where the margin for error is so minuscule and the penalty for failure is so big that it's really difficult to quantify.
It's, and as you were talking, I was thinking about an earlier conversation I had today with my colleague, and we were discussing some, prices and discounts and things like that. And I trust my intuition, and I believe that in work and in business, it's been intuition more than anything. But then I caught myself saying, like, in our business, it's really easy. Numbers will give you the answers. I don't know the answer. I can only guess. So how do you find and we come back to balance. How do you find the balance between your logical thinking and your intuition? Because I trust my intuition, but in the things which are important, it's like, sorry, your intuition is messy now.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky in the sense that intuition is a byproduct of a process of trusting. The more you trust it, the stronger it gets. There's a law of practice which states that the more you practice something, the better you get at it. And I use this law to explain to people why we're so distracted. But I also explain to people that's how your intuition works. The more you trust it. And I'm quite fortunate that, data for me is just a tool. That's it. I cannot rely on data, because when I get a statistic in front of me, that statistic the advantage of it has already been leveraged by someone else. So all I'm doing is probably just using a statistic to acid test something to see, okay, you know what, there's something really interesting, and that's how I use it. So it is all about trusting your intuition. It is about trusting. And, the thing is that, Kristina, in the world of high performance sport, and I say this, that my primary job in professional athletes is to take someone's confidence before competition to such a level that they're bordering on arrogance, that they literally they're bordering on arrogance. Because in my world, there's zero room for self-doubt. Zero room for self-doubt.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Because
Scary.
Kristina, because the genetic differences between the 8 people that line up for a final at an Olympic Games is closer than you are to your sibling. If you look at the physiological difference, there's probably 3 or 4 hundredths of a second between the person who comes out first and the person who comes out 8th in a 100-meter final. Physiologically, it's so small. So how do you bridge that gap? You bridge that gap by person's self-confidence, by trust in their ability, and they have to walk onto the field knowing that I am going to win. If they have an iota of a doubt, they've got zero chance. So my job predominantly is to raise that confidence to such a level that their intuition, their gut, my voice, their trust in their process, everything stacks up to that one moment in time. And then after that, we bring them back down to ground zero.
Oh, wow. But what if, so you have to believe yourself to be the winner when you go there, but out of the 8 people, only one is. So
Yes.
how do the other 7 get their confidence back after they fail?
Yeah, that's a process that we keep, that's a process we got to keep working on, isn't it? We go back to the drawing board. Kristina, the beautiful thing about the world of professional sport is whether you're Roger Federer or Rafa Nadal or whoever you are, Mika Hakkinen, whoever it is, you have a coach, and my job for 20 years has been a high performance coach. I wake up, I watch my athletes compete, train, practice, eat, sleep, do everything. At the end of the day, I go and give them feedback and I tell them, listen, this is what you did right, this is what you did wrong, and go back tomorrow and let's try to correct it in some shape and form. And there's no judgment. And this is why they're so good, because we are students of our art. Every single day we are learning information and we're looking at how do we get better and better. So for those people who lose, right, we go back to the drawing board. And we go back to the drawing board every single day. And what's interesting is that you should try this. When I ask corporate people, what is your percentage of success? I get an answer of between 60 to 75% of the time they tell me they're successful. The most successful athletes in the world are successful between 25 to 30% of the time. And these are people who have been successful for 30 years. So 70% of the time, we are failing. So failure has to become our friend. And on this one point, I'll tell you something that's really fascinating. The most difficult thing to teach an athlete, Kristina, is how do you leave everything on the field? Everything emotionally, physically, mentally on the field. And the reason why this is so difficult, because most of them are scared that what happens if I leave everything and I lose? My entire identity is gone. But the point is that if they don't leave anything, they'll never win. So it's about bridging that 1% gap, and that's how we make champions. And this is how we constantly working on reculturing them. And success is, if I'll take 1 minute, I'll tell you a really beautiful story. There was in 2016, in the Olympics, the 10,000 meter finals, women's event, there was a lady from Ethiopia, Ayana Almaz, who went in, and she was the strong favorite to go in and win this race. Okay, and everyone knew this, and 18 people started this. 18 people started this race, Kristina. The women's record, Olympic record before this race was about 30 minutes and I think about 15 or 18 seconds or something. Ayaz won this hands down. She ran at 29:18 or something close to that. She ran the race so fast that eight women broke the previous Olympic record. And not only that, all 18 who started the race ran their personal best. 18 people started, 18 people ran the person. Now, I spoke to 4 of them after that race in the next 6 months. And they said something really interesting. They said, yeah, 3 people got the medal, but all of us were winners. Because, success is so difficult to define. And when you look at money and you look at medals, those are the external variables through which we define success. It's so important for you to understand what is your variable for success. To all of them who got faster, they were successful, and this is what we're working on. So this is how we rephrase it in the athlete's mind, pre-competition, post-competition. This is how we bounce back.
I have a question for you, but I also have a comment before, because those business people who tell you that their success is 60 to 70%, I think they're not looking deep enough, because
I agree.
I think my business, let's say out of 10 businesses, 7 succeeded. Maybe that is the statistics, but within one business, even within one project, the amount of mistakes you make and you adjust, I think we regular people also fail way more than we want to admit. But my question is this. So you said to go on the field, you have to leave everything behind, you said, right?
On the field, yeah. Get ready to leave everything on the field.
And I've had the situations like that in my life as well, where you realize that, it's a leap of faith. You can't do the leap of faith having the security left behind. Like, you would like to, let me try, and if I succeed, I'll leave it behind. But if I fail, I'll go back. So and because I've experienced that, that's why my question comes. What is more important in that step? Is it more trust or courage?
Great question. Trust or courage? They're probably one and the same, or they go hand in glove, isn't it? What I've realized is that trust comes from knowing your process. Trust comes from confidence in your process. Courage comes from trust. Courage comes from the trust in that process. So everything for me really is about understanding your process more than anything else. And I think this is where most people get it wrong, and I think the simplest, easiest way is, I tell people, is that, when a farmer plants a seed in the ground, he's not going to dig it up every day to check whether it's growing. He knows that, he trusts that if I water it, if I put soil, it's going to grow. Professional athletes are the same. When we design a macro plan over 1 year, we trust that that plan is going to get us to where we want to. And you cannot keep adjusting that plan. So first comes preparation, right? Then comes trust in your preparation. And courage is the manner in which you dig deep to execute a process you have trust in. Okay.
Repeat again.
Repeat again. Yeah.
I was repeating it in my brain, but I thought I'd rather let you repeat first before I repeat.
Yeah, so that's what I feel. I feel that it starts with preparation in your process. Trust is the confidence you have in your process. Courage is the inner strength that you develop to trust the process that you've decided is going to get you to where you are or you want to be.
But I was So sometimes we are wrong, and I guess you can't be brave if you're afraid of making mistakes. So what happens if you've trusted the process and invested your time and effort, and then it turns out
that you failed?
So how do you deal with that? Because you said you have to deal with failure a lot, obviously. I mean, if athletes fail 70% of the time.
Yeah. So it's amazing. You know, what we do in the world of sport is when my athletes fail, I we don't talk too much. I get it out of them. I don't, because you know what happens when you think about something or you ruminate when you fail, your brain subconsciously is only looking for errors. So even if you've made 100 things done positively, your mind will only pick out the 2 or 3 things that you did wrong, you know. And success is a byproduct of repeating the things that you're doing right. So in the world of professional sport, what we do is, or what I do is, every time we win, immediately the next day, there's a debrief and we analyze our victories. We're looking for what we're doing right, because success leaves a trail, leaves a path, and you need to follow that path. So what I generally tell people from is that if you're failing and you're introspecting on your failures, right, instead of asking yourself what you did wrong, you got to ask yourself, what did I do right, even in that failure, you know? And that is how you're moving forward. By looking at what you're doing right, you're going to move forward all the time. But if you're going to start focusing, and that's the danger with failure, is that it kind of pops up the things. But if you're looking at that innate feeling of failure, you know, this is where mindfulness comes in for me, Kristina, is I generally allow each one of my athletes to truly feel, man. You know, if you are truly invested in something and you lost, there is pain, there is disappointment, there is sadness. You know, I don't let my athletes just sweep that under the carpet. I tell them, okay, let's feel this. You know, where are you feeling this in this body? What does depression, what does sadness feel like? Because, you know, when you embody that feeling, that becomes fuel for you to work harder the next time. You just sweep it away, then you move on without real fuel. And this is a really important thing, because, you know, any emotion can be the fuel to move you forward if you use it to be fuel. Otherwise, if you just wallow in it or you sweep it under the carpet, you're going to repeat that cycle over and over again. So you know, one of my coaches once told me, if there's 1% of value that you can gain from an experience or a person, it is your responsibility to create a system to make sure that you maximize that 1%. You know, so I use this lesson with everything in my life, whether it's a failure, whether it's even a conversation, even a learning, even a single incident.
So, you know, I'm still a little bit stuck with that whole failure thing, because I think this is what we are so afraid of. And as you were talking about emotions and feelings and sadness and pain, the thing that was bugging me was this idea of losing trust. Because I think trust, and you also said it's such an integral part of courage. So doesn't failure kind of erode the trust that you might have in the process? Because we all have our doubts about ourselves, about our abilities, and the moment when we see the truth that, you know, I'm not that brilliant, that kind of, it's so hard to get back to that. So do you have any practices or any
Kristina,
ideas how to work with trust?
Yeah, you have through inquiry stumbled on probably one of the most important realizations I have had in a long time in my life. And can I tell you, and probably one of the best ways of saying this is, you know, my professional athletes, there have been times in my life when I've become a person I really didn't like, you know, and I had to become that person to knock them out of their comfort zone. Okay, because just like my athletes fall within their comfort zone, every single one of us is in a comfort zone. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example, because you see, the brain likes 4 things. It likes shortcuts, it likes stories, it likes symmetry, but the most dangerous thing that it likes is familiarity. Okay, Kristina, and one of the easiest ways to explain this is that when we go shopping, generally we all like a few colors, and if we don't have anyone with us, we will navigate towards those colors and we'll try to buy the same thing over. But when you have a friend with you, the person will tell you, you know what, hey, this looks good, try it. Someone will knock you out of that comfort zone. Okay, now when you say the word trust, it's so important for every single person. If you truly want to keep growing in some shape and form, every one of us needs a person who we trust so much. We trust their thoughts, we trust their opinion, we trust that when they say something for us, it's not coming from malice, it's coming from a good place, it's coming with our intention and our best version of ourselves coming from that. When you trust that advice from any one person, they can knock you out of your comfort zone. So I am that person for my professional athletes. So they don't need to trust the process. I need to trust the process. They need to trust me. And when the trust with me is broken, then they need to find someone else. But as long as they trust me, right, I'll be the person who guides them. So, you know, and we all need that person, because our brain would trick us into staying in the same place. You know, the brain wants to save energy. It doesn't want to be challenged in any shape and form. It will trick you to staying in the same place. So it's very hard for you to trust the process to push yourself out of the comfort zone. You know, someone needs to push you out of your comfort zone. And this is so important. And if there's one thing I think people should take away from it, is that find a person who you trust so much, right? And really forge such a strong relationship that you trust. When they pick up the phone and say you're wasting time, know in your heart that they're saying that because you are wasting time and whatever it is, you know?
Interesting. So it's interesting because you suggest that we need that that force outside our own little universe to push us out of the comfort zone. And part of me kind of agrees, because I remember when I was jumping with a parachute, I was thrown out of the plane. But the other side of me says, but you know, personal growth tells us that everything is in our hands. We don't need anything. We don't need anyone. You know, happiness is within. And now we are self-isolating. And you know, you don't need the world. You should be happy right now, and you should be living right now. So how do you find balance between these things, like, you know, self-reliance and having this someone to push you out of the plane?
Interesting. For me, it's Kristina. For me, true realizations and true conclusions and true discovery can only happen by yourself. So the personal growth industry is absolutely correct in saying that, listen, if you want to move yourself out of your comfort zone, the realization of the direction that you want to go in will be drawn by yourself in isolation. But when you understand the direction that you want to move in, external forces can really help you move in that direction. But no one can move you out of your comfort zone in a particular direction if you have not introspected on where you want to go. You know, so I call it the individual mentality. Individual mentality is true healing. You know, when you're surrounded in a tribe with too many people around you, then you're feeling great, but you're never gonna move anywhere. You know, when you want to understand the direction that you want to go, you got to introspect, you got to trust your intuition, trust your gut, and that can only happen alone. You download your biggest realizations and your most profound conclusions when you find comfort with solitude. After you find comfort with solitude, you can tell people that, hey, I need to do this, and they'll say, okay, fine, I'm going to be there to make sure you do this every single day. They are physically moving you out of your comfort zone in the direction that you've determined.
I see. It's like going to the gym. You force yourself to the gym, but then you have the body there pushing you around.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, oh my God, I had a question and I suddenly lost it when I started thinking about the gym. Gym kind of always puts me in this vulnerable position where I don't know what to do anymore.
Amazing.
So, you know, going back to people, another question that I've been quoting you quite a bit was about this, you know, the fine line between tolerating emotional abuse and drawing your own lines. And here you were talking also about, you know, that you need a person, and I remember the question. I'll write it down, but I'll still ask this first. So you need some person to trust, some person to actually help you move in that direction. How do you build that? How do you find that person? How do you build that trust? Because a lot of us, we are with our set of people as we are, especially now, you know, maybe it's just your spouse that you've known forever, or your children who are actually not those people if they're still young, and your friends or colleagues. Like, is it something that you just pick someone who is already here and hope that they can do that for you? Or is it some more conscious process where you have to go and look for a teacher or mentor or someone like this? How does it work?
So it's a byproduct of a few things. So firstly, you know, the science of relationships tells us that there are 3 factors to deepening any emotional connection. One is positivity, 2 is consistency, and 3 is vulnerability. Okay, and to be honest, it's only through vulnerability that you can really deepen an emotional connection, and you're an expert in knowing this and sharing with us how vulnerability can help us really heal a relationship and move closer. But the feedback that comes from that relationship is a byproduct, Kristina, of time, isn't it? You trust the feedback. How's it gone? And I think, this is where intuition is really important, and this is where the intention of the person is the most important thing. And I think intention is probably the most critical thing. So what is the person's intention in the advice they're giving it to you? And you'll be able to sense, you'll be able to sense whether that intention is one of malice, the intention is one of competitiveness, the intention is one of just pure love and
How can
serving
you tell?
you.
How can you tell? Because my experience is that the most manipulative people are the most believable.
The most manipulative people are the most believable. Probably. They're probably the most believable on a surface level, isn't it? And for me, this is my process, at least. My process is I bring together what is the quality of the information that they're presenting to me, okay? And I look at intention. There's a reason why we say 97% of communication is nonverbal, because the truth is that, that a manipulative person can manipulate their words, but you cannot manipulate your tone and your intention and your emotion. That is
But
fair.
this is not fact. This is not fact. So let's say if you are face to face to a person like that, their words are carefully crafted, and you can't say like, "Hey, I feel something is off," and they're like, "No, why do you say that?" So what do you do with that 97% of information is that non-verbal information you can't even use to your advantage, or you just turn around and leave?
I don't turn around and leave. I listen. I'm always listening. I'm trying to be mindfully aware of everything. But then I practice this is where mindfulness helps, is where I try not to take a decision if the mind is really flickering between two places. But Kristina, for me, I tell people to use meditation in a beautiful way. One is to still the mind, but it's also a way in which you can get things to really pop up that are disturbing you. So I generally sit in meditation, or even just practicing a bit of breath work with stillness, right? And I bring that conversation to my awareness, and then I look at really how I feel, and I'm looking at, and it's not about the fact that you can't trust them. The challenge is that you are fighting your own intuition and trying to trust them. The battle isn't between you and that person. The battle is between you and your wanting to trust that person. So those are the walls that we really need to break down, because once you start breaking those walls down, you'll start feeling and you'll be receptive to everything. And that is, for me, the biggest thing. So in meditation, I'm able to break those walls down, and I'm able to see, okay, what is it that's bringing this to the forefront? I bring that into my awareness.
It's very interesting what you said. I really love this whole idea that when you feel manipulated, what you actually are fighting is your own intuition. And we came to that question I wanted to ask you, because you were mentioning the word introspect several times, and I believe that this confinement that we are all in is a great time for introspect. But can you explain that whole concept a little deeper? Because it took me 40 years of my life to finally, and I think I was a smart person all along, but it took me 40 years to actually start doing introspect. It's kind of not part of our everyday routine. Can you explain that term a little bit deeper?
What introspect is? So introspection is pretty much the process of how you get in touch with your thoughts, with your feelings. You sort of articulate it, and you teach yourself how to set perhaps emotional, physical, and spiritual boundaries that protect your energy in some shape and form. So introspection is the process by understanding what is it that you need to protect, or what is it that is not serving you well. And sometimes what is not serving you well could be a wall that you've built against people. So for example, you could have said, you know what, I have been betrayed in relationships twice, so I'm not going to allow myself to connect. to someone else. In introspection, we'll learn that I've built walls, and as a reason, in building walls to protect me, I've made myself feel lonely. So that is in this case where we built it. Or in setting personal boundaries, you could say that, you know what, I'm in a relationship, and what has happened is that in the time that we've been together, I've lost my identity. So all I need to do is learn to carve out personal space for the things that I love so that I can be nourished again. These are some examples of what happens in the process of introspection. But it is in all shapes and forms, a process of really deepening and understanding the trust within yourself, and that is where, and when you introspect, you check in, you understand your intentions for yourself, you understand what is the blocks that you've come in. It's really looking at what is serving you well and what isn't serving you well at this time. And I, to be honest, use a lot of lenses. So I use a lot of inner child work, and I use a lot of subconscious schema work to really get people to do it. And I also do a lenses exercise, which I've created, where I just fill things in, and then I look at, okay, what is the duality of that, and why am I thinking this right now? And it is trial and error. There's no defined journey to get to a specific place.
How does it work? Is it triggered by certain events, or is it a practice that you do on a daily basis? Like you sit down in the evening and you introspect? How does it work for you?
For me, I definitely do it at least 3 or 4 times. And, there needs to be purpose with everything, and a lot of times people think that purpose is just going to pop out from somewhere. And so when I'm doing a meditation session, for example, there's a purpose defined with it. So is that purpose to calm my body down, or is that purpose to find clarity with respect to a particular situation? Because you'll only find clarity when you hold that in the middle of your awareness. So when you hold something in your awareness, then you can look at it from multiple perspectives and really find clarity around it. So for me, it's about defining what I want, and I carve out times where I'm saying, okay, you know what, I've been feeling like this, this is how I'm feeling, and I just want to know why I'm feeling like this. Then I introspect on the type of conversations, the people I've met, what I've done, have certain things come my way, have not come my way, has worked, what is happening in conversations, and I look at how many of these have moved me off center, and why am I feeling like this, and why am I reacting in this manner. And the more I do this, it starts becoming a part and parcel of who you are as a person, and I think that's when growth really starts to move ahead.
Do you have any favorite questions you ask yourself? Just an example, we all are sometimes in situations where we experience something we don't want to experience, or we feel things we think we shouldn't think or feel. Do you have any set of questions that you ask yourself to figure out what's going on with you?
Yeah, and figure out what's happening. So, I ask questions like, first thing is I ask, okay, so what am I feeling? And then the question that's linked to that is, okay, can I communicate what I'm feeling with empathy and compassion first, right? Because if I can communicate what I'm feeling with empathy and compassion, then I know my prefrontal cortex is really firing on all cylinders. Then I look at it, I say, okay, what would the situation be like from that person's perspective, And then I say, okay, am I okay to feel the way I'm feeling? And is it okay for me? Can I move ahead with that person getting their way and me getting the way, but maintaining the dignity of that relationship in any shape and form? So these are very simple things that I sort of ask myself. But the first thing is I check in with the emotion at that time. And if the emotion is out of control, if I'm so angry that I'm not in control of the words that I use, or my vocabulary, or my tone of voice, that means that the narrative and the emotion are too tightly wound, and I need to really pull back. When I'm able to be in control of the words that I use to express the way I'm feeling, then I know that I'm in a good place, and I can move forward with courage and confidence.
Do you introspect in the situations where you think you behaved less than you could, like what you just described, when your emotions and your narrative are too much together and you are maybe not your best self? Do you introspect on that? And if you do, what do you learn from that? How do you move on from that? Because just to give a context to that, I sometimes do things that I feel later like, oh my God, how could I have behaved like that? And I'm still, I'm still trying trying to see how can I become better through that experience. So
yeah, this is beautiful. This is really beautiful. And yes, I do this all the time. And the question, it is, and the challenge is, I do something which you're going to think is really mad. Okay, so if I acted in a manner and I went back and I introspected, and I'm saying, oh, that's really unbecoming of you, and that was really unnecessary, or perhaps it was not even that I was harsh. Maybe I was a little sarcastic, or or blunt, or whatever it was. I then go back in introspection, and I to go back and apologize to that person, right? And the reason why I'm doing this, Kristina, is because that is my penalty for my mistake, right? Then my mind will remember that mistake more consciously if there's a penalty for that mistake. If you keep making a mistake but there's no penalty for that mistake, then your mind doesn't have any skin in the game with correcting that error. Okay, and this is a lesson actually from the world. This is the lesson from the world of professional sport. In the world of professional sport, when you make a mistake in the game, there's a penalty for it. If you're playing baseball and you get caught, you're out. You hit in the air, you get out. In cricket, if you step over the line, it's a no ball, right? So, which means that if I am practicing and if I don't have a penalty in practice, I'm not going to hone my skill well enough to have mastered it in the game. So it's the same with life, isn't it? If you don't bring in a penalty for your errors, what is the biofeedback you're giving your brain to not repeat that mistake? So I put myself in some really embarrassing situations where I pick up the phone and tell a person, listen, this is going to sound really weird, but this is how I felt and this is what I was thinking. And I feel that I may have come across sarcastic, and this may not, you may not have felt this, but I just need to say that was my intention, and I am apologizing for that. Which is now bringing my error to the front of my mind, making me more conscious of it the next time.
It's really annoying because you just touch upon a very interesting topic at the very end of our interview, so we won't be able to go deep into that. But I'm partially struggling because on one side, part of me is like, yeah, because I've penalized myself for, let's say, for being too negative. I would like penalize myself with trying to, okay, you're too negative now, 10 compliments. Actually, you know what? How I do that. If I don't like a person, then I penalize myself by trying to genuinely compliment at least on 5 things, not necessarily face to face, just in my brain, that person. Yeah. Because I'm trying not to be too bitchy, and that's obviously part of my nature. But the other part of me is struggling because I don't want to punish my children, for example, because I think punishment is a very interesting concept, which, and again, you're talking about penalizing, not punishment, so it's not quite the same. But for example, I don't like the concept of punishment on the state level, because I think it should be prevention, not punishment. It's the same with children, right? But and then on the other side, we punish ourselves by being so self-critical. So how to find balance in that penalizing process?
How do you find balance in the punishment process with kids?
Yes,
is
in the penalizing.
In the penalizing process. I think this is really interesting. I was reading a book by a Swami called Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he said something really interesting. He says, children should not be threatened. They should either be rewarded or punished, but don't threaten, because they're not able to perceive what that threat is. And that then you instill fear in them. And I think, borrowing from something like this, I think the most important thing is always make clear your intention for whatever you're doing with your kids. So if it's punishment, make clear the intention for why, make clear the intention of it. And I think your intention really needs to be felt at all times, because if an act is, because children will need to feel that intention, they know that you're coming from a good place, and if it's explained beautifully to them. I think do not punish and just leave it. Don't tell them do something and then step away from that, So we've got to be mindful in how we're explaining our intention for the actions we've now moved forward and requested them to do.
But with yourself, where do you find the balance about? Because like I come from a very self-critical environment. For me, like when I moved to US, reading the resumes of American people was so hard for me. I was like, how can you be like this about yourself?
Yeah.
Because I come from a very self-critical environment. How do you find balance with yourself, not to overdo the punishment on yourself?
Yeah, for me, it's only one lens, Christina. Is my own voice sabotaging me from moving forward? For example, am I so critical on myself that I'm not even able to start my next project, or or start something? And if that has happened, then I immediately put an end to everything. All of that self-criticism. So you can really give yourself biofeedback and be critical of yourself, but to the point where it doesn't inhibit you or sabotage you from moving forward, either in a relationship or with a project or with work or anything. And that for me is the real biofeedback that I'm using. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I'd like to talk more, but our time is running out. And maybe next time we'll get to talk live without the filter,
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Internet and cameras and everything. To everybody who wrote your comments, thanks a lot. I'm sorry I didn't see very well, and some of the questions I did read, but I was thinking like, no, I'm not asking that. If you want to ask Shayamal questions, go to his Instagram account. It's somewhere here. Just follow him and ask him questions. He'll answer your questions, I'm sure. Maybe not, I don't know.
Of course I will. Yeah, I will.
Because I had promised, right? we have less than 2 minutes left, so I'll do my traditional thing. Guys, first of all, Shayamal, thanks for finding time to talk to me. Guys, please leave Shayamal a heart in any shape or form in the comments, or just press the heart for coming and sharing and jumping around with my feminine brain, a little here, a little there. So thanks a lot for being so honest and for talking to me. And I really hope we'll get to talk without the internet. So.
Thank you so much for having me. This was actually a beautiful conversation, and I'm glad we took the opportunity to do this, and obviously look forward to many, many more. And have a safe confinement, introspect, and find balance in some shape and form. But thank you, Kristina. This was beautiful.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone, and see you soon.